I am Celine Williams, and I have two co-hosts with me tonight. And before we get started, I just want to welcome you to our live webinar. We are talking about blended families tonight. And if you're in a blended family, you already know this is a hot topic. But before we begin, what I'd like you to do are a couple of things. I want to just run through my checklist, and I'd like you to go over. We have a private Facebook page that we've opened up tonight, and it's called Blended Families with Ms. Parent Guru. That's me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'll let my co-host tell a little bit about herself, and then we're going to jump right in because this is, like I said, a hot topic, and we only have 60 minutes. So let me just check a couple of things. Mic check, mic check. Are you with me, Shawnee?
We just froze, but now I can hear you. So did you ask me to introduce myself? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say mic check, mic check.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Let's see. And what we'll do is when I'm on speaking, I'll ask you to mute, and
Okay.
I'll do vice versa, and that should help our bandwidth. Let me just make sure. I'm going to check over and make sure that I'm all here. So just give me a minute.
Okay.
You know, Shawnee, I understand why people get millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do broadcasting. It is an art. It is really an art. I feel like I've just gotten my degree during the times that we have been doing these webinars. I've gotten my degree in communications and technology and videos and everything. And so, but here's our point. Our point is that we are sharing our experiences and our training with you, our friends out on social media, our friends who are living this life of raising kids, whether they are young kids, whether they're teens, whether they're adolescents, that in-between stage that drives you absolutely out of your mind, or whether they're actually adults who've come back home to live with you, whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent. So, you know, this is the story. This has been the story that we've been talking about since we started this. And we actually have been, this is probably our 5th broadcast, and we're delighted to bring it to you. I love working with my co-host tonight. I love working with Shawnee because she actually brings it. You know, she's living it. She's also consulting with people. And let me tell you a little bit about my story and where I'm at, and then we're going to kick it off and talk with her and just get this going. Before we do that, though, I must say that I learned when I was growing up to share. And my mother and my dad were fierce about us sharing with my brother and sister, which was always a challenge. And so I'm asking you tonight to do that very same thing, and that is to share. So go on Facebook, and right underneath our broadcast, or right above our broadcast, it should say Facebook share. So I want you to just let your friends on Facebook know, hey, we are joining a broadcast on blended families, and you should be a part of it. And so I'd like you to join and share that, or also share it with your friends on Twitter and let them know. And our hashtag tonight will be blended families. Okay, so here's what's going on. So, I have been talking about parenting. My oldest is actually 31. He's part of my blended family. My youngest, who's actually part of my nuclear family, is 24. So, I'd like to think that I'm past the parenting, but if you're a mother, you're always a mother. Am I right? You're always a mother until you transition to the other side in the spirit world. And so I'm delighted about it. I've got 2 daughters and 2 sons, and my life's passion is talking to parents about being great parents. And it's not enough nowadays to say that you go to work every day and you provide for your kids. They need a lot more. They need a lot of your nurturing. They need your understanding, and they need for you to listen to them. And a lot of times I find when teenagers and young people talk with me, one of the things that they say is that, it's hard to talk with their parents. And I know we say that as parents, it's hard to talk to our kids. So, that's the dilemma. And when I coach parents, and I will be talking to you about a way to connect with me, when I talk to parents and coach with them, I always advocate there's 2 sides and we need to hear both sides. So tonight we're going to talk about the blended family and the sides to that. What I'd like you to do is pull out your phone, and we're going to ask you to connect with us in a technology way. What I'd like you to do is dial this number. It's going to be, or text this number. You're going to text 708-501 7060. Let me say it again. I might have said it a little too quickly. 708-501 7060. And you're going to text the word test, TEST. And what that does is that allows you to stay in touch with me, Ms. Parent Guru, and you have an opportunity to take advantage of a plethora of parent information, whether it's the daily tweets and Facebook posts, whether it's the newsletter, or whether it is you want to connect with me and spend some time talking about how we can help you have a better relationship with your son or daughter. So if you text that word test, that'll put you it'll ask you some questions and have a free gift coming with it, but it allows me to stay in touch with you as well. And so we'll repeat it again at the end of the broadcast, but I encourage you to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my co-host, Shawnee Benton Gibson, to join us and tell you a little bit about her. Okay, so Shawnee will be joining us. The technology bounced her off, and let me just talk a little more about until she rejoins us. So who am I, and why have I selected parenting as one of my passions? Well, a few years ago, probably, let's see, maybe about 15 years ago, I went through a divorce, longer than that actually. And I never expected that to happen. And those of you who are single or divorced parents, especially if you've gone through a divorce, it's terrible. There's nothing, I can't sugarcoat it. It's just not a great experience. And so one of the things that I found is that I wanted to move closer to my family, my village, because I do believe a village, has great, it's really great for your kids. It's great for you. And it allows you to heal in some phenomenal ways. But I moved back to the city. I had lived in the suburbs. And I started noticing some really interesting things, some dynamics in the city. One of the things that I noticed is that sometimes the young people didn't have the same bedtime. They didn't have the same come home requirements that I had for my kids, which was odd. Like, I don't know about you, but my high schooler had a bedtime. She had a cell phone that I kept with me at night so that she could sleep. And we ate dinner together. Now, when they had after school activities or sports, then, to the extent that I could, band concerts, I went to those, because what you're doing is you're investing in that kid of yours. And I tell you what, if you will spend time with them, they will spend time with you. So let's see. I hope that Shawnee can get back on. So anyway, going through a divorce, trying to figure out how to knit my family back together, because, you know, usually your kids either feel responsible for you going through a divorce, or they dislike you, or both. And my kids, it was not uncommon for them to tell me that they hated me, which I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel good. So, you know, we had that time where things weren't going very well. But what I did was, we had a lot of time together. I did something that I thought I'd never do, which was I instituted culture night. Now, culture night when I was growing up, because my mom and dad divorced as well. So what my mom did was, she had us on Wednesday nights. We would stand around the piano and she would play these songs I had never heard of. Where did they come from? But she had this old book and she played the piano, and we thought that was the worst thing we could ever have to do. But you know what? After a while, it's something we started looking forward to. So my brother and sister and I and my mom, we'd be singing these corny songs at the piano. And like I said, I started doing, I didn't play the piano. Well, actually I did, but you know, we did other things like that. We had a culture night. You know, we played board games. And so that's what we did to start knitting our family back together. And I will tell you that between having consistent, you know, whether it was discipline, and I'm not saying, you know, I pulled out a strap or anything like that, but I was consistent. If you did something that was not what we had agreed to, then you had consequences. And I reinforced those consequences, which is what I tell parents today. You can't waffle. You know, when they become teenagers, they really need you. They need you more than they needed you when they were adolescents, because there's so many forces and influences that are not your own. Looks like my co-host joined me back. You with me? All right. Okay. So I'm gonna pause my story right now, but I just want you to know that, you know, I have been there as a divorced parent. You know, I have been a married parent, and now I'm a blended family parent, and all have different dynamics. And Shawnee and I, and when Taria joins us, we'll talk about those dynamics. And so if you're on the Facebook page, it's called Blended Families with Ms. Parent Guru. Please send us your questions so that we can address them and weave them into the stories that we talk about tonight. Okay? All right.
Well, all right. Let me just introduce myself really quickly, because I want our sister Cheryl to return to her story. So my name is Shawnee Renee Benton Gibson. I am the co-founder and director of Spirit of a Woman, or SOW Leadership Development Institute. And I'm also the executive director of the Griots Healing Circle. So I am going to have the distinct pleasure of supporting the conversation and sharing the story of my journey as a parent, and my experience in a blended family, growing up in a blended family, as well as being a parent of children in a blended family in different ways. So I'm definitely going to share about those experiences and what worked and what didn't work, what I brought to the table that created discord and chaos, and what I have since learned from and have created a sense of balance. And it's interesting, I feel like blended family is a misnomer, because at any given time, the blend, it could be like oil and water, or it could be like a wonderful blend of like in chemical reaction that creates light and elevation and expansion for all members involved. And depending on what day of the week it is, I experience one or the other. So I look forward to sharing about that. My background is that I'm a clinical social worker. I've been trained and in the field for 23 plus years. And I also bring my spiritual disciplines to the table, and I do rites of passage. I worked in child welfare for 12 years, where parents were struggling to get their children back from out of foster care. So I have a lot of different experiences around this subject matter of families and blending and trying to make things work when it seems like it's impossible. So I look forward to co-creating this conversation with Cheryl tonight.
Awesome, awesome. And you know what? I'm glad you said it like that, Shawnee, because what I didn't realize when I started, I've written a book on blended families, and I, you're going to love this title. My kids are killing my marriage, and the, the
Wow.
blended family formula, because, there are a lot of dynamics. Like you said, blended family means a whole lot of things to different people. But what actually is happening is that you have children in one relationship, you leave that relationship, and you start another one. And if the other person that you are starting that relationship with has children, it's a blended family. And it doesn't really matter whether you marry that person, cohabitate, just continue to date, you all are blending. You're blending cultures, you're blending religions, possibly, you might be blending ethnicities, you're blending a lot of different things. But if nothing else, you can be from the same block, but you'll have differences. And so tonight, one of the things that I found as I was writing this book, I found that I was, not only was I in a blended family, with a man that I married who had two children, a boy and a girl, just like I had a boy and a girl. But not only did I marry into that, I came from a blended family. I said, what in the world? So I'm almost done writing this book, right? And what it dawned on me was, oh my God. So my mom and dad divorced. I was 16. I was actually happy because my father had started drinking. And it was a terrible experience. Who knows how unhappy he was, but it really cast, a lot of chaos in our family. So my folks divorced, and my mom never remarried, but my dad did. And I really didn't think about it much until I got married in my first relationship. And here was this woman that he brought to my rehearsal dinner, brought to my marriage, for the ceremony. And all I could think of was, what does my mom feel? So, as a kid, and I wasn't a kid, I was a grown woman by that time, but, you got to think about that relationship that you are bringing your kids into. And so one of the things that I'd like to talk about is, let's lead up a little bit to this blended family relationship. So, dating other people. I mean, you got to think about it. I can remember after I divorced, I started dating a guy, and what was really important to me was how I conducted myself with my children. And it was important to me raising a daughter and a son, but especially a daughter who is looking at herself through me, right? So I am her role model, whether I want to be or not. And I know people are out there saying, my daughter's going to grow up and move away, and I got to have my life. But I want you to think about it from a different standpoint. I want you to think about the impression that you're making on her. So if you have a number of partners that come in and out of your children's lives, you are coloring them for life. And so when I think about dating other people, this particular gentleman, we really cared a lot about each other, enjoyed being together, but he did not have the same goals I had. And I enjoyed being in a monogamous relationship. You know what I mean when I say monogamous? Like, I don't want to be involved with somebody who is sleeping with a number of different people, and I'm sleeping with a number of different people. First of all, it leads to a lot of different chaos and, social disease that I didn't want to be a part of. And truth, part of it was I didn't want to have that kind of parade in front of my kids. I wanted my daughter to feel that she, respected and loved her mother, and that I was a great role model for her. So it was important to me, the kind of people that I allowed into my home as I'm raising my kids. Once it looks like Shawnee got kicked off. So another thing that was important is, there's a lot of debate on when you introduce your boyfriend or girlfriend to your kids. And I know sometimes people say, I know Steve Harvey says, introduce them right away. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, because what if you don't like them? I think maybe you should date them for a while before you decide to bring them home. And I know that, there's some pros and cons to that. If you introduce them early and your kids fall in love with them, and then you don't like that person or they don't meet up to your standards, hey, we have standards. You know, if you're a mom raising kids, you have standards. And if you don't have standards, let's talk offline, because standards are important, right? Because that's what, you know, we always say, this is what I write about in my parenting books. You know, it's not so much what we tell our kids, it's what we do with them. It's what we show them, you know? So we can't say, I don't want you to sleep around. And then we parade a number of men into our lives or women. So when do you introduce? When it feels right. I can't say, you know, what feels right for you is going to feel right for somebody else. But I do know that it's got to make sense. And if your kids are really young, you know, I don't know, but my kids weren't. You know, I had an adolescent. I think my son at the time was 11, maybe 10, and my daughter, maybe he was even younger than that. So that was important to me. Another topic, which is like huge, huge, huge. Who comes first, your kids or your new person that you are dating? And, you know, think about it. Think about it. Let me just paint a picture for you. So think about when you fall in love. You fall in love. Oh, the world is wonderful. You know, you're giddy. You're on the phone all the time with this person. And this is what I write about in My Kids Are Killing Your Kids. His kids are killing my marriage. But, you know, there's just that euphoria of feeling good. And you almost forget that you've got these kids, right? But you can't forget that because they're right there, unless you're sharing custody with your spouse, your former spouse. So when I say who comes first, your kids always have to come first. They always, always, always have to come first, right? If they're not coming first, who's taking care of them, especially if they live with you? Okay, let me say that again. If they're not coming first, and the boyfriend or the girlfriend comes first, who's their advocate, right? Who's running down the touch, you know, who's running down the line for them? Who's advocating on their behalf? And so, you know, the kids always come first. So that means that, you know, maybe it's Friday night, and Friday night to you means going out, and you're going out with that favorite person that you've met and you like them a lot. Well, but your kids, you know, you're not going to sit them at home by themselves, right? Not week after week after week. So, you know, you got to do a little dance. You go out with them, and maybe you go out with your significant person when they're with their dad. And that's really what I found I had to do. You know, I had every other weekend for custody. And so the weekends that I was free, I might have spent going out. And the weekends I was not free, I didn't go out with somebody else. Or as I got to know, you know, the person that I was dating, then, and I thought that he would be good around my kids, then we would do a group date. So I'd let my children bring a friend of theirs, and, you know, so it would be like a group of us out, which is really nice because you get a chance to see the dynamics. You know, your kids get a chance to see you in a different light. And I will tell you that they don't always like that. You know, it might be your daughter having an issue. It might be your son. Usually it's the sons. Okay, so anyway, that's another thing to think about. I really like talking about the kids coming first, though, because I think nowadays, you know, when I go out, you know, one of the things that I do as a parent coach and as a person who studies families, which is what I do, I like to help families build, you know, great relationships for the future. Because think about it, you only have your kids for a short time. I know 18 years sounds like forever, you know, especially if they're 6, but that time goes so quickly. You'll look up and they'll be graduating from 8th grade, and you look up again and now they're graduating from high school and then college, and you'll wonder, where did the time go, right? So I always encourage, build your relationship. The earlier the better. You know, if they're young, if they're 6, 7, and 8, they still love being with you. Make it enjoyable. You know, have popcorn night. I mean, do really corny stuff. Dress up in crazy looking clothes. Do a, I don't know, gosh. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the weird stuff I did with my kids, but make it fun. Go to the museum, and like I know at least at Navy Pier in Chicago, they have those weird mirrors, and you look like you're either this big or this big or this big. Do stuff that's goofy. Ride the bus together. Rent those bikes if you don't have bikes. I don't know. I came from a culture where we were outside all of the time, and there were always kids on our block growing up. And we jumped rope, we did hopscotch, we played it. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe that's, yesteryear, but find something that your kids like to do and do it with them. And if you have more than one, so let's say you have a son and a daughter. So I had time with my son and I had time with my daughter. And, initially as I was going through it, I didn't realize each of them had entirely different needs. The thing that helped me was that they were 5 years apart. So what I did, what pleased my son didn't always please my daughter and vice versa. So I had to give them time, different time. But my son loved alternative music. Some of the music was really weird. But, since I showed that I was open to listening to it, it would be, he would pull out his little iPad or his iPod and he'd say, Mom, listen to this song. Now, I'm telling you, it was really weird. But here's the thing. It didn't matter how weird it was if I was willing to listen to him and hear this song. And then I started liking some of that stuff. Oh my God. Anyway, but the other thing that I found with him was he loves ice cream. He loves to eat, but he really loved ice cream. So if I found that we had, if we had hit a rough spot in our relationship and he wasn't communicating with me, then what I would do is I say, let's go get some ice cream. And you would be surprised, and I'm talking to mothers of sons right now, you would be surprised at the words that will come out. And, I'm an educator, so I've taught high school. I taught high school boys. I have taught at the community college level. I was taught in Iowa when I taught technology and things like that. So I'm really familiar with high school ages as well as young adults. Okay. And one of the things that I find, especially with boys, is that don't talk a whole lot, listen. Hey, you joined me again. What happened? You got kicked off?
Technology. I don't know. I was trying to get back on, but I'm like, this is all perfect. So you've probably been blessing them again. So I'll catch up. So I'm going to listen to you and I'll jump in.
Okay. So I'm talking about, just some of the dynamics that as a mom, a divorced mom, or a single mom, some of the things that you do with your kids to build relationships. So, I just said what we could do with the sons. Not a whole lot of talk, Mom. They're not like us. Females communicate differently than males. And I know you know that with your boyfriends and your husbands, it starts with your sons. So I found that the less I spoke and I could continue to cook in the kitchen, I could, be doing something that looked like I wasn't paying any attention to him, no direct eye contact, and he would talk like there was no tomorrow. My daughter was entirely different. Mom, are you listening to me? Mom, are you listening to me? Because she needed to see me talk, listen to her, which is what we do as women. We want that eye contact. Look at me while I'm talking to you. Isn't that what your mom used to say? My mom used to say, look at me, my grandmother, look at me while I'm talking to you. So entirely different dynamics. And it really makes a difference when you start dating and you have those dynamics already going on in your household. So we talked a little bit about dating. We've talked about, who comes first, your kids or your, person that you're dating. I'm going to ask Shawnee to jump in here because I'm sure she wants to weigh in on that. So what do you think? Who comes first, Shawnee? Your kids or your boyfriend?
Well, who came first? And this is an interesting dynamic because sometimes when your kids are old enough, even when they're young and not necessarily conscious of what they're doing, they can create a rift between you and the person that you're involved with. So that open dialogue, that communication that you spoke about is really critical. And then where appropriate, engaging the person that you're seeing in that conversation, because it depends on where you are in the season or the space of the relationship, whether you should bring that person in to talk with your children. And, if you're serious and you're intending on living together or getting married, they should be part of that conversation. I mean, they don't have the ultimate say, but they should have a say, be able to express their upsets or their joy or mixed emotions about it. So, I never want to be in a position, nor do I think any parents out there in cyberspace want to be in a position where you're choosing between your mate and your children. That just doesn't work. But when you create open conversation, even conversation that doesn't necessarily feel good but is necessary, then it decreases the amount of chaos, upsets, discord that can be exist in your family dynamic, and that can also make or break a relationship that you're in if the person feels like they just can't deal with the level of upset and disturbance in the relationship as a result of folks not being committed to, whether it's the children or other family members, because everybody wants to weigh in on this sometimes. Just having that open dialogue and communication and not being afraid of some of the pushback that you might get from other people as a result of being in that communication is really, really key. I also wanted to share something with you based on what you talked about with your daughters. So I have two adult daughters, 26 and 25. And when they were very young, was in a relationship with someone, and they also had a child, the person that I was involved with. And what was missing for them before that person came on the scene, and even when they arrived, was me working so much, trying to make sure that they had and things were in place. And while I understood cognitively and emotionally and physically what was needed and why I was doing what I was doing, how it occurred for my daughters was that she's not there. And because I do healing work and I was a therapist and I was working in child welfare, it occurred for them like I was putting those people in work before them, when I was just trying to ensure that we had enough food to eat and that we had a place to stay and all of that. And then injecting a person into that and having them take attention from me too, my daughters were just not pleased with them. My adult daughter was very vocal about it, and my second daughter, she was more introverted and silent about it, but in later years expressed how she felt about all of the dynamics that were going on and felt like she was being neglected by me as a result of me choosing work, and then afterwards choosing a mate that she felt interfered with the dynamics in our relationship. So it's a delicate dance, and you have to stay in communication because you just never know.
It's funny. I like how you said that, because as I think back, that's exactly what, not so much exactly, but I was a workaholic. So I worked in corporate America initially when I first went through a divorce. And when I moved my family to the city, into Chicago, I at least worked in Chicago, so that wasn't so bad. But it was not uncommon for me to work late. And so, I was also conscious of the time that I was away from them. And, you justify it. You say, we've got to eat. I want to make sure that your needs are met. I can't, there's no way you can have those gym shoes or those pair of slacks or jeans if I don't work this way. And yet, sometimes in retrospect, as I think about it, as long as the household needs were met, like I could afford the rent, I could afford for us to have, heat and light and food, then some of that other stuff could go away, because the time with them, you never get back again. And so I agree with you. But what was interesting for us is that the man that I later chose to marry, when we decided to get married, he was really a friend of our family. Not only was he a friend, my kids liked him as a friend, but also my sister, I got pushback from her. You can't marry him. He's our brother. He's like a brother to us. And so, it's funny, the dynamics that are going on. Everybody is weighing in on this. Mm-hmm. And depending on the age of your kids, you have to have an open enough relationship and have a tough enough skin in order to listen. Because just because you're going to do what you're going to do eventually, you still want to hear them out. Because otherwise, if you think you have chaos, you're going to really have some chaos if you're not listening.
Yeah.
Am I right?
You're absolutely right. And I have a 10-year-old son, and Celine, you know me, or getting to know me, I'm just straight about what I'm up to, and what I'm causing for my life. So I declare that I'm right now without a mate, and what I'm declaring for this year is that I will cause a partner, a life partner. So I'm committed to that, praying on that and committed to that. But I have a 10-year-old son, and on my altar, in my prayer request, is that it's someone that is definitely accepting of my son full-fledged, because the relationship that I was in for 7 years with my daughters, and that person, we broke up and we weren't together anymore. I found out that there was more investment in me than there was in my children. He was so hurt by what happened between us that he disengaged and stopped communicating with not just me, but with the children that he helped to raise, and, knew well. My second daughter, I feel like they have more of a bond than I had with my daughter. And so for him to just cut off the ties like that had a devastating effect on her in particular. My older daughter was like, oh, take him or leave him. But my second daughter was greatly impacted by that. So having a 10-year-old son, knowing that he'll be impacted by a male's presence, because I have two daughters and me. So he has like three women that, really pamper him and pay a lot of attention to him. So to have a brother come in and intervene with that will be something. And I want my son to have a say, like to be able to express himself and say what he thinks and feels about the situation. It's critical. And a lot of times it's like, we're grown, I need to have somebody for me, but it's like, it will be a lot more pleasant, peaceful, and balanced if there's communication amongst everyone. My adult daughters have something to say about it. Their conversation is different than what my 10-year-old son would have to say, but definitely it's a co-created dynamic. And when you skip over that, you pay for it on some level. And I don't mean it all has to be bad, but I'm just saying that there's a price to pay when you don't communicate openly with those who can't express themselves. And they start young these days. So you need to be asking them questions and checking in with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's interesting is that, we found out, so we decided to get married, I think the year my daughter was a senior, if I remember correctly. And we didn't really ask permission, if you know what I mean, but we had already discussed it. But what she told me later was, I wish you had waited until I had gone to college. And I took that to heart. I heard that was how she felt, you know. So in our haste, mothers, in our haste to, complete our own desires, it's really important that we're listening with our hearts as well as with our ears for what our kids are saying to us. Because sometimes waiting a year or waiting a couple of years, what that does is, depending on the relationship, of course, what it does is it might give you more time to know each other and to build, to have, like you said, a more heartfelt, wonderful, warm relationship, as opposed to, working where, like, I know when we first started out in our marriage, the kids it was like us and them. And then you bring the us and them with the kids that were from his family. And I hate that word step, but you know what I'm saying? So you've got my kids, his kids, and then us. And, what I always did, and I'm just like you, I'm a person of faith. So every weekend that I had my kids, whether I was involved with somebody or not, I prayed for an awesome weekend. I prayed to God for an awesome weekend. And that's exactly what I had most times. Sometimes I had some surprises, but not often. And then when all six of us were together, I was a praying sister, because everybody is bringing that baggage. So, my kids, my own children, the time that they would spend with their dad, they'd come back and I'd have to rework them. And, I didn't write about this yet, or actually I probably did, but reworking means that, you got to clear the noise out of their heads. Who knows if he's saying something, I don't know that my ex said anything negative about me, but you never know what's going on. I'll just leave it like that. So whether there's negative talk, whether they are seeing another person that their dad is dating, and then they got to come back into the household, you just don't know what kind of noise is going on with your kids. And so, I tried to make it comforting how'd the weekend go? Fine. Okay, I knew that meant that it didn't go so good. So if all I'm hearing is fine, okay, then, and if I probed, they might just snap at me and say, Mom. So then I knew to back off. So, I would try to reach them other ways, and it was a dance. It was a dance that we did. Looks like we have Taria joining us.
Hey.
Hey, Taria, do you hear us? Okay, I'm going to keep talking until I actually see her face. But, I agree with you, Shawnee, 100%. That conversation is very important. You need every stakeholder at the table. And, even if you have a 5-year-old, I promise you that 5-year-old in today's time is more like a 7 to 10-year-old, and they have an opinion. And they're going to tell you how they feel about it.
One way or the other, because it could come out in behaviors, which was happening with my 10-year-old. One of the things that is my experience right now is my 10-year-old son, his dad has a wife, and then they have 2 younger children. So the blended family can constantly be in a space of evolution. First, it was my house, and his dad's girlfriend. Then it was my house, his dad's wife, and then it was my house, his dad's wife, and then his new baby brother. Now it's my house, his dad's wife, their house rather, the baby brother, and now there's a new baby brother. So he has a 5-year-old brother and he has a 2-year-old brother. So the evolution that he's experienced over there hasn't been much of a shift over here, but it has had an impact. So he's the oldest child in his dad's house, the youngest child in my house, and the middle child between all of us. That's a lot of flip-flopping, and as parents, we've, struggled with trying to accommodate him because he adjusts. My household is different than his dad's household. There was challenges with his other mother, because I don't use the terminology stepmother. She is the other mother. And I tell you, sisters out there that are listening, you can be mad and angry and direct venom at the other woman, but the other woman can become the other mother. So if you don't resolve that, then you have somebody raising your child and there's animosity between you and that other person, and you don't know what that's going to manifest in as that person is caring for your child. So your best bet is to operate from the mindset of what is in the best interest of the child, and not your own issues about how they got together and you disrespected and all that other stuff. That's important, but that's not at the top of the list when you have children involved. So, I definitely coach women around that. It's like, listen, work it through, because if that child's spending any time with that other sister or brother, then, if you don't resolve it, then some of that issue is going to seep over into the relationship that they have with your child, and it's going to create toxicity, and you don't want your child to be swimming in that and breathing that in.
That's, what you have not said. That's like tantamount. That's most important when you start talking about, the other people that your kids are spending time with, and you too. I mean, if I always, one of the things that I said, this was an oxymoron, but I said it anyway. So when I started going through the divorce, my prayer was that I would be able to get along with my ex and raise these kids, because they had no control, nor was it their responsibility, fault, whatever you want to call it, and the fact that we weren't able to stay together. But they were entitled to a mom and a dad, and that's what our responsibility is as the adults that brought them into this world. And so, and magically it worked. I mean, there were some times that I had to grit my teeth, and I'm sure he felt the same way. But even to this day now, when we have family events, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, when his mom passed, when my ex's mom passed, not only did my kids and I go, but my husband now joined us in the room, the sick room, seeing her as she was transitioning out to the spirit world. And so, all of that makes a huge difference with your kids, because first of all, it leaves very little wiggle room for them to pit you guys against each other. And that is so important. You cannot say to me, or my kids, they can't say to their stepdad, well, mom said I could do it, because he's not hearing that. Well, let's go get your mom. Let's talk to her on the phone. They know not to try that, and vice versa. So, you got to keep those lines open no matter what the circumstances were. If somebody stole your husband and is now with them, that's the way it is. You got to get on past that and raise your kids with respect and love and dignity. Taria!
Oh, we can't hear her. You're on mute, huh?
Take the mute off.
I'm just a busy talking.
Go ahead and tell us about you.
Good evening, Cheryl. Good evening, Shani. Thank you guys for having me on here to talk about blended families. Very, very important topic and dear, to my heart, because growing up, let me just say this. I caught the last of what Shawnee was saying, but growing up in the islands, blended families was kind of like the norm, for us, so it wasn't such a like a big shocker. I've always had ton loads of cousins and everyone. You don't know necessarily how they got there as a kid. You just happy.
Uh-oh.
Looks like Taria got a little frozen. So when she gets back, I love technology. I love technology. It's awesome and it's working for us through the end of this call. But I think where she's going is that in her culture, blended families are the norm. And if you think about it, blended families are the norm in the States and probably a lot of other cultures because, whereas when we were growing up, a lot of people stayed married for the sake of the kids. That's not happening anymore. There are lots of change. If you've decided to trade your mate in for whatever reason, and I hate to say it quite like that, but that's really what's going on, then you trade them out almost like you trade out a suit or a new wardrobe. And so blended families are the norm. It's not uncommon to have, even to find out that your spouse may have brought a child with him or had one while you were together. All of that happens. And so it's really important to embrace who you are, to stay, true and kind and loving to your kids, and to talk honestly. I mean, that's one of the things that I did after my divorce. I spoke, very candidly to our kids because they could not understand why, their dad and their mom divorced. And, I've always been honest with them. And, whether you believe in that or not, I think that to find out secrets, when you are, getting ready to leave for college or get married, you find out that the dad or the mom that you always thought was yours, just like in that Jumping the Broom movie, were not really yours. They're really, your grandparents or whoever they are. I don't believe in secrets like that, So you talk honestly to your family, to your kids. Go ahead, Shawnee.
Taria back.
Okay.
You're here?
Yeah, like you said, you gotta love technology. So I'm just gonna keep my finger on my mouse pad so my computer won't go to sleep again. Oh boy, yeah. I was about to say it wasn't until I was married and I found myself in my own blended family situation, I had a deeper, respect, for other women in my family, such as my grandmother, because my grandmother, she had an open household, okay, which meant she took care of everybody, including, the kids from, her husband's, other kids. Okay, and it was a thing where we grew up, with them as cousins. They were part of the family. Everyone came over at the house on Saturday. My grandmother, she was a true matriarch in the sense of the word. So even as she got older and she got closer, up in age, everyone looked out for her, including, those, other women as well. okay? And she made it look so easy. That's the thing I wanted to share. She made it look so easy. Not one day did you ever hear her complain. Not one day did she say anything negative about, the kids or about their mom, okay? She just fulfilled, her role, as a mom, and what she became was a surrogate mom, okay? And I remember, um, just to share with you and just to be a little bit transparent, um, when my ex-husband, he's now my ex-husband, told me about, his daughter that he had, she was 5 years old. Okay, so he waited 5 years, to tell me. And I remember just being so angry and being so hurt, and couldn't just imagine that, wow, this is really how my story is turning out. This is really happening. And of course, when you're raw in the emotions, you say a whole lot of things that you shouldn't be saying because you're operating from a place of hurt. And I remember, when he brought her to see me for the first time, and I just looked at her, precious little thing, and I just looked at her, and my thoughts were, you know, I'm not ready to like you yet. And I remember saying that, okay? That lasted all of 15 minutes. 15 minutes, that's all it took. Because she came, she sat in my lap, she ate out of my plate, she got in my bed, and she slept with me, and she peed on me. And after that, after that, you just have a bond, after that. But and I say that to say that, even though we're divorced, I still take that responsibility very seriously because I had the opportunity, to be blessed with her, even though she's not mine. I didn't deliver her, but she's very much considered, to be one of my bonus children. I don't call them stepchildren, but I call them bonuses, okay? Because they just bring that, additional joy, into your life. So you're right, Shawnee. After, you get over the hurt and you get over the pain, you have a responsibility because it's just like any other young person or young life. You have the ability to touch. You want to make sure that you're leaving, a mark. You want to make sure that that kid or that child has love coming from every single angle possible. There can never be enough love that's showered, on our kids. And all you have to do is just love on them. And you're right. There's no purpose, going through the back and forth. He did what, she did what. You could sit and you could be angry, about it, but that's not helping you either. It's not helping you. It's not helping your marriage. It's not helping your family, and it definitely isn't helping, the children. So that was a lesson for me, in just growth and being stretched, because at first I didn't think I had the room in my heart. But like I said, after 15 minutes, it was done.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Taria, because, thank you for that transparency. I think that it's important, what we're doing is just sharing our experiences, not only in our own families, but also in the work that we do. And, somebody out there is being blessed with this information because, I know that if somebody came home, if my husband came home and told me that he had a 5-year-old and we've been together 12 years, that's just not a good look. As my kids say, that's not a good look. That just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And yet there's that child, and what do you do? And so one of the things that I think is important, I'm going to skip over a little bit. I think we've talked a lot about that. I want to talk about some Achilles heels that can happen to those relationships of blended family. And one is the daddy's girl, and one is the mama's boy. I want to just have you guys weigh in on that. I've got my own ideas, but I'd like to hear what you think about that. Whoever wants to jump in is fine with me.
Mm. Now, you mean as it relates to blended families or just
I
in?
do. I do. So in other words, if you're in a relationship, you're in a blended
Oh,
family relationship, and
oh,
you have, you've got your son or he has his daughter, to me that's an Achilles heel. You know what when I say Achilles heel, that's going to be your weak spot or your sweet spot, whichever way you want to look at it. But who wants to talk first?
hmm. Well, any relationships where there's enmeshment, and there's blurred boundaries as far as roles, there's going to be challenges because if someone, like I'm a woman, and if I have a man coming in, I have a 10-year-old son, and if I'm enmeshed with my son and there's blurred roles and boundaries with us, then that person coming in doesn't have a fighting chance because that relationship will interfere with the intimacy, will interfere with the communication, will interfere with the balance and peace that I was talking about earlier that you want to seek to have in your home and amongst your family members. So if you have a child that is thinking, and I don't mean physically doing anything, but energetically operating like they're your mate as opposed to your son or your daughter, that's a problem because they're going to block, as they say, as the kids say, um,
Mhm.
um, the expansion and the growth of that relationship. And then you'll be constantly negotiating between your child and this other person, and it's not fair to the child, and it's not fair to the other person. If it's an older child, even more so, it's like, oh, who wants to deal with that? But I know what you're talking about. Like I've experienced it, not myself, but with sisters that I've had relationships with, big, teenage sons, and the son is angry when the man comes over and stomping around the house, and it's like blocking and like flexing in the house when the person comes. It's very nerve wracking and uncomfortable. And when that goes unchecked, it's like, what message are you sending out there about you, about this boy, about what you're trying to create? That's an interesting dynamic. So that's definitely an Achilles heel. It will kill off possibility of any relationship lasting for you. So go ahead, Taria. You might have a different take on it.
Well, another transparent moment.
No?
I'm gonna say I don't know about this one because this is funny. Like I tell people, I have my son. My son, he's gonna be 21 in July, and it's, oh my gosh, he's everything but my son. Okay, so sometimes he believes that he is my husband, and other times he believed that he is my dad, okay? And I have to remind him that you are my son, okay? So I definitely know and understand what that dynamic looks like. But it's very interesting because I had that conversation this week that it is a challenge because as you raise your kids as a single parent, whether it's your boys as a mom or your girls, and your kids get accustomed to your routine, okay, and especially if you haven't dated in a long time since your separation, okay, to me I think it creates kind of a confusion, and the roles need to be clear, okay. So I don't believe in having people hanging around if you're not sure if they're going to be around,
Mhm.
because I definitely do believe that every time you date someone, your kids or your children date that person too. And when you go through that breakup, they go through that breakup too. So sometimes we're not really conscious and aware of their feelings, in a situation. So it could be something where, you met someone and, they think that person is a wonderful person, and you're attached to the person, they get attached to the person, and then here comes the breakup. Okay, and sometimes we think only of our hurt and our pain, and we don't think that they're going through it as well, and they go through it, and after they see that, they can't unsee it, so it puts them on the defensive for the next time. And especially for boys, like you said, the squaring off. I've seen my son, why, first of all, why are you answering my phone? And then his voice gets like 10 times deeper. you know, and like what do you do? Like, guy, are you serious? What do you do?
Right.
Ma, who's that? Ma, who's that?
Like
You know,
he's
you
like
have
he's
your own.
dead.
Yeah, it's like you have your own phone. I don't answer your phone. Why are you answering my phone? You
That's
know,
right. That's
so
right.
so it's definitely interesting. That's all I could say. So for me, I just prefer for right now to just keep the two separate until I know that the relationship is going to be as such where I feel comfortable, introducing you to my family. I've seen it,
Hmm.
okay? And one separation and one divorce to me is enough because I'm is enough for me, so just imagine the kids. So why take them through that, if you don't have to take them through that? And I think that people should be able to understand that, both ways, because every time you date and you bring that person around, they date too and they get attached. Okay. So, and then it's a learning curve, and, to get adjusted, you've been doing it one way for so long with your kids, and that's what they know. And then somebody else enters into the picture and they have ideas and thoughts of how what you've been doing for so long should work. You have to understand that this is what we know and this is what we've been doing. Okay, so have a little bit of patience in the situation. It's not going to change overnight. It takes adjustment, and it does take the compromise to make it work. But give it time to understand or know if that person is the right person to try to make it work with.
It's funny you say it like that, and I'm really delighted to have both of you as my co-host tonight, because there's so many different dynamics that we actually are running out of time. But I do want to ask one more question, and of course we can always represent this at a later date in a different webinar. But here's the thing. I agree with you that whoever you bring in front of your kids, everybody's dating them. You're completely right on that. Let's move over to a different question. So you're now in a relationship, you're married again, or you're living with that person, which to me is pretty much the same thing. And how do you've got this dance going on. So you've got your kids, you've got his kids, and how do you set up the household so that it's not tense? What do you think how does that go?
There's this process that I take couples through, or partners in business through as well, called partnering with power. And the top pillar, there's 4 pillars, and the top one is communication. And you're going back to that again. It's like, get in communication with all of the young people as well as your mate, and share what you need to share authentically. Because we talk about transparency. At this point, I don't know any other way to be. I'm 46. I ain't got time to be lying about it.
Right.
Funny, I was with had a little girl, and I was being inauthentic. I was pretending like I was okay. The mother hated me, and it was he was in court. I just was like dreading her coming over because I'm like, it's gonna be drama. So like really being able to speak the truth, right? And then creating a space where people can talk about what we can co-create together, which is the second pillar, co-creation. Contribution and collaboration. It's like, what are we going to do to make this environment a peaceful environment where people feel fully expressed with respect? Sometimes you're expressing the old top, that can honor this household and make sure that everybody can get their needs met as best as possible. And a lot of times it's absent. The parents are just doing it. Come on over with that fantasy thinking that it's just going to blend and fit together, and our kids are both 50 years old, so they're just going to come together. No, they may have different energy, backgrounds, and stuff. You have to create that.
Yes.
Or co-create that. So if they're coming, prepare. It's not just like, oh, they're here, now we're going to figure this out. Like, talk about before they get here so that we know how to navigate this piece, so it can be fun and light, or if it's going to be challenging, at least have structure. So communication is key.
I agree with you. One of the things that we did is that, we established guidelines as a couple My husband and I, we talked a lot about how this is going to work together. And then, like you said, Shawnee, we also had discussion with the kids. And they didn't, I mean, they were friendly, but they were guarded because who is this person? You know, why do I have to like him? I don't care that you're calling me your sister or your brother. I don't even know if I like you. And so we opened up, you know, our relationship. You know, we had family meetings. You know, we talked. Um, like this is how I did in my own nuclear family. So we brought it together in our blended family, but there was nothing that you couldn't talk about. You know, as long as you spoke with respect. Now you can't call somebody an asshole, you know, but I mean, if you felt that way, you had to figure out a way to say it respectfully, but you definitely could say it. And I think that, like you said, to think that we're gonna all be happy because we decided to get married is for the birds.
Right.
You know, it's for the birds. Taria, did you want to say something?
Well, no, I was just kind of reflecting, on my own situation, and I'm thinking about, the kids, and one of the things that I tried my best, and I always try my best to do this, is to keep the grounds of communication open, and to make it comfortable to communicate. Okay, so there's some challenges, especially when kids are managing two households.
Right.
Okay, where they're with their mom, for a period of time, and then they're visiting, dad, or they're visiting mom, for the weekend, or they're alternating weeks, whatever the situation might be. Okay, and there's that back and forth. It really helps for everyone to be on the same page. Okay, and one of the things that I had to realize is that we had as women, we had two different parenting styles, just completely, different. Okay, and I had to explain to her, like, one day, not that I'm like a neglectful mom or anything, but just certain things, when I had my kids, I said I was going to do, and other things I, wasn't going to do. Okay, for example, we have a washing machine inside the house and a dryer. Okay, therefore, at 13 years old, my son, I don't do his laundry. Stop doing his laundry at 13. Okay, that's it. You know when you're out of clothes. You know when you need to go to school. You know what you need to have to be prepared. It doesn't really matter to me when you do it, because once again, it was just my son and I. Okay, but at his dad's house, there was that structure because people are there more, and so you now have to get accustomed. So once again, the communication, and it helped for her and I to have that conversation. Like, yes, you're going to see some things that are different, and he's managing my son. He's managing, two households, okay? And you teach your kids to be respectful, okay? And you have the same respect that you give to me and your dad, you have to give to your dad's wife as well. Okay? And the same thing with her kids, because she has other kids. Okay? And when I take my son, for the weekend or whatever, your kids are welcome too. Okay? And I'm demanding the same respect. Just like how you respect your mom and you give your mom that level of respect, you're going to have to give me that level of respect too. And it's all about communication. And I can't sit here and say that I have any horror stories. I really don't, because it's all about, communication. Like I said, once you take the emotion of the situation out of it, you put the kids in front and their needs in front, then, not that it's a walk in the park, but it definitely makes it a whole lot easier, to go through and just keep the lines of communication open. And that's it.
Oh, I completely agree, Taria. I think that we could talk about this subject, at least it's near and dear to my heart, for at least another hour. We're not going to do that to you. This has been our blended family contribution, our, our thoughts and views, some of the experiences that we have lived through as mothers, as partners, as shared with children, as you say, what did you call them, children?
The bonus children.
Bonus. I like that. Bonus children. I say
Bonus
children of
children.
love, because I think that as long as, like Shawnee is saying and Taria is saying, as long as you are communicating, you have to communicate. I mean, if you're not blending your family, you still have to communicate, because right now there's so many influences that our kids are a part of. Social media alone is one huge influence. And so if you think about it, if you're not talking, somebody's talking to them. Somebody's at their ear. And so in this whole dynamic of going to your dad's house, going to your mom's house, going to your whatever, grandparents, and coming back and trying to stay sane, you gotta make a space for them to feel comfortable. We're going to conclude. I'd like to again offer you to connect with me, Ms. Parent Guru, C. Lynn Williams, and the way that you can do that is through texting the word TEST, T-E-S-T, to 708-501-7060. I'll offer my co-hosts an opportunity to connect with you, and or we will go over to our Facebook page for blended families called Blended Families with Ms. Parent Guru, and we will leave our contact information. I'll leave that open to the both of them. But we hope that you have enjoyed this time with us. There will be a rebroadcast so that you can catch it or share it with your friends and family. But feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you have. I'm going to turn it over to you, Shawnee, and then Taria.
Okay. So what I have to share before we close out is a commitment to intention for myself. That I'm committed to being in communication with my son's dad and his other mom, so we can create a life that works, so he can live his purpose, because we are responsible for creating a space for him. So I'm recommitting to that, and all of you listening can hold me accountable for that. How you can reach me is on Facebook. My name is Shawnee Benton Gibson, or you can call me for coaching or support around your blended family, any other things that you're up to that will enliven and enrich your life. Spiritual counselor, coach, your therapist. I'm more than happy to support anyone who really wants support with whatever they're dealing with. You can contact me at 718-781-6979, or once again, 718-781-6979, and have a blessed blended journey.
Okay, and I'd just like to share the old adage that it does take a village, okay? And sometimes you don't get the opportunity to choose where that village comes from. Sometimes you just landed in the middle of the village, okay, and you got to make it work. And what kids need more than anything, like I said, the love. You could never shower too much love on children. And notice I said love, I didn't mean spoil them. That doesn't mean that they get everything that they want, okay? But you just love on them. You give them the opportunity to talk to you and know that there are people out there that they could trust. So if they can't talk to their mom or their dad necessarily, I try to be that person, for my bonus children, that you could come and you could share and talk with me, because I understand that I have 3 kids as well, okay? And not everything my kids are able to share with me, okay? So they do in turn to their dad or, his mate, and talk to her as well. And for that, I'm grateful, because of that, I get to know and understand things about my children that I would never else realize. So once again, once the emotion from the situation has been removed, it can be, a win-win, for everyone, okay? So if you would like to connect with me, I didn't introduce myself formally, but I'm Taria Hodge, and I'm known as a business trainer. My business is Mayaba Consulting Services. If you would like to connect with me, you could connect with me on Facebook at facebook.com/Taria.Hodge, or I am also the host of Social Media Saturdays. So if you would like to join Social Media Saturdays and learn ways that you could grow your business using social media, you could join my private group as well, facebook.com/Social Media Saturdays.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll have signing off now, and have a great and wonderful blended family evening. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.